The small bar on the edge of Space Station 7 wasn't much to look at, but it had become the unofficial meeting spot between humans and aliens. Tom Miller, the owner, had seen his fair share of strange encounters over the years, but nothing quite like what happened that night. The aliens called themselves the Blue Ones, thanks to their shimmering blue skin. They had arrived at the station 3 months ago, claiming to be merchants interested in trade. What fascinated them most about humans was their ability to consume what they called poison drinks, alcohol. "You willingly drink this substance that affects your brain?" asked first speaker Ray, their lead diplomat. His large eyes blinked rapidly as he watched Tom pour another round of beers for the human traders at the bar. "Been doing it for thousands of years," Tom replied with a shrug. "It's part of our culture. Some of our best deals were made over a good drink." This seemed to deeply trouble the aliens. They had been observing humans for weeks, watching as they consumed various alcoholic beverages without dying. The Blue Ones had run countless scans, trying to understand how humans could metabolize what would be lethal to most species. What the humans didn't know was that the Blue Ones had a plan. They believed humans were too dangerous with their alcohol tolerance. In their minds, this ability could one day be weaponized. So they devised what they thought was a clever scheme. That evening, when Tom wasn't looking, first speaker Ray and his assistants secretly added triple-strength alien neurotoxins to the wine barrels. The amount they used would have killed any other known species instantly. They watched and waited, expecting chaos. Instead, the regular crowd of human miners and traders filed in after their shifts, ordering their usual drinks. Tom started serving the spiked wine, completely unaware of the modification. "This batch tastes different," said Mike, an old miner, taking a long sip. "Got a nice kick to it. Almost reminds me of that moonshine my grandfather used to make." The Blue Ones watched in horror as not only did the humans survive, but they seemed to be enjoying the enhanced wine even more. Their carefully planned sabotage had backfired spectacularly, and they were about to learn that when it came to humans and their drinks, they had only scratched the surface. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of their education about human alcohol tolerance, and their simple plan was about to spiral into one of the most entertaining incidents in Space Station 7's history. The next morning, first speaker Ray and his science team huddled in their quarters aboard Space Station 7, reviewing the sensor data from the previous night. According to their readings, the humans should have at least been in severe pain, if not worse. Instead, they had left the bar singing. "Perhaps we didn't use enough," suggested Blue One scientist Lee, his antennae twitching nervously. "The humans are larger than most species we've encountered." Ray nodded slowly. "Double the dose tonight. We must understand their resistance." That evening, the bar was even more crowded than usual. Word had spread about Tom's special wine, and more humans had come to try it. The Blue Ones watched as Tom opened a fresh barrel they had tampered with earlier, this one containing twice the amount of neurotoxins. "Now serving the house special," Tom announced, unaware that his wine had been modified again. The humans lined up eagerly, having enjoyed the previous night's unique vintage. Among the crowd was Bill, a retired space marine who had been drinking in bars across 3 galaxies. He took a long sip of the wine and his eyes widened. "Hot damn, Tom. This stuff reminds me of that K-fermented drink from the ice miners on Pluto. Remember that stuff, Pete?" Pete, another regular, laughed and raised his glass. "The one that made your tongue glow in the dark for a week? Good times." The Blue Ones were now recording everything with their most sensitive equipment. Humans were not only surviving the enhanced toxin levels but comparing them to drinks they'd had before. It defied all their scientific understanding. As the night went on, the scene in the bar grew more festive. Someone started playing old Earth drinking songs on the station's sound system. The humans linked arms and swayed together, singing about something called a whiskey in the jar and other beverages the aliens had never heard of. First speaker Ray approached Tom at the bar, trying to maintain his diplomatic composure. "We notice your people seem particularly resistant to strong substances. Has this always been the case?" Tom wiped a glass as he thought about it. "Well, humans have been brewing drinks pretty much since we figured out how to grow crops. Some say we started farming just to make beer. Funny how that worked out." The revelation that humans had intentionally developed agricultural practices just to produce recreational toxins sent waves of shock through the Blue One research team. They had severely underestimated not just human biology, but their entire cultural relationship with alcohol. More concerning to the aliens was how the doubled toxin dose seemed to only make the humans more social and energetic. Instead of the expected mass poisoning, they were witnessing what the humans called a really good party. As the night wound down, the Blue Ones retreated to their quarters again, their plan in shambles. They needed a new strategy, but they were also developing a reluctant admiration for human resilience. Unknown to them, their next attempt would lead to an even more surprising discovery about human drinking habits. The last thing they heard as they left the bar was Bill's booming voice, "Hey Tom, make sure you save some of this batch. My cousin's getting married next week, and this stuff would make one hell of a wedding toast." The Blue Ones had no idea what a wedding toast was, but they were beginning to realize they had stumbled into something far more complex than a simple matter of toxin resistance. Their education about humanity was just getting started. The Blue Ones had spent a week preparing for their next experiment. This time, they decided to target the wedding celebration that Bill had mentioned. Surely, a formal ceremony would be the perfect place to prove how dangerous these drinks could be. First Speaker Ray had ordered their strongest combat-grade nerve agent to be mixed into several wine bottles marked as Special Reserve. The dose was 5 times stronger than their previous attempt. According to their calculations, it could knock out a charging space rhino. The wedding was held in Space Station 7's main hall. The bride was Bill's cousin Jane, marrying a space freight captain named Rob. Tom had been asked to handle the drinks, bringing along the special wine that had become so popular. "Ladies and gentlemen," Bill announced, raising his glass of the spiked wine, to the happy couple. The Blue Ones watched through their monitoring devices as everyone took a drink. The human custom of toasting fascinated them, deliberately synchronizing the consumption of toxins as a sign of celebration. But what happened next shocked them even more. "This is amazing!" Jane exclaimed, her white dress shimmering under the station's lights. "It's even better than last week's batch." "Tom, you've outdone yourself." The wedding guests agreed enthusiastically. Soon, the dance floor was full of humans moving to old Earth music, their glasses regularly being refilled with the enhanced wine. Rob's grandmother, a tiny woman of 80 years, particularly enjoyed it. "Reminds me of the moonshine we used to make back in Kentucky," she said, finishing her second glass. "Though this has a nicer aftertaste." The Blue Ones were frantically checking their equipment for malfunctions. According to their readings, the toxin levels in the wine should have been fatal to any living creature. Instead, they were watching humans of all ages dancing, laughing, and asking for refills. First Speaker Ray decided to take a bold step. He approached Bill, who was serving as the best man. "We notice your species has an unusual capacity for these drinks. How do you manage it?" Bill laughed, patting Ray on the back, a human gesture that always made the Blue Ones nervous. "Well, you should have seen what we brought to my brother's wedding last year. Homebrewed stuff from the miners on Europa. Now that had a kick. 3 people got matching tattoos, and someone tried to teach a maintenance robot to dance." The concept of voluntarily increasing toxin consumption at special events was adding another layer to the Blue Ones' confusion. They had intended to expose humans as dangerous, but instead were discovering layers of cultural practices they hadn't imagined possible. The wedding celebration continued late into the night. The Blue Ones watched in amazement as humans performed various traditional drinking customs, something called a conga line, the clinking of glasses during multiple toasts, and singing songs that seemed to get louder and more energetic as more wine was consumed. Back in their quarters, the alien scientists were reviewing their data with growing concern. Their strongest toxins had failed. Worse, they had seemingly contributed to what the humans were calling the best wedding party this side of Mars. "We need to rethink our approach," first speaker Ray admitted, watching the celebration wind down through their monitors. "These humans are clearly more resilient than we anticipated." What the Blue Ones didn't realize was that their next attempt would coincide with another human tradition they knew nothing about, something the humans called a bachelor party. And this time, they would learn why some human drinking customs came with warning labels. After the wedding fiasco, the Blue Ones were ready to give up. But then they overheard something interesting at Tom's bar. Another celebration was being planned, something called a bachelor party for Pete's younger brother Jack. "What exactly is a bachelor party?" First speaker Ray asked Tom, trying to sound casual while his antennae twitched nervously. "Oh, it's a tradition," Tom explained, cleaning glasses. "One last big party before someone gets married. Usually wilder than the wedding itself." The Blue Ones couldn't believe what they were hearing. A celebration even more intense than the wedding? This was their chance to prove once and for all how dangerous humans could be. This time, they went all out. They mixed their strongest military-grade stimulants with their most powerful sedatives, creating a combination that their scientists claimed would knock out a small moon. They secretly added it to every bottle of liquor in the bar's storage room. The night of the bachelor party arrived. The bar was packed with Jack's friends, all ready to celebrate. The Blue Ones had hidden their most sensitive recording equipment throughout the room, determined to document what they expected would finally be proof of human vulnerability. "First round's on me," Bill shouted, ordering shots of the spiked whiskey for everyone. The Blue Ones watched eagerly through their monitors, certain that this time they would succeed. Instead, they witnessed something unprecedented. "This stuff's got quite a punch," Jack said, grinning after his shot. "Reminds me of that rocket fuel the mechanics drink on Mars base." "Rocket fuel?" First speaker Ray whispered to his science officer. "Surely that's just a figure of speech?" But before they could process this information, the party kicked into high gear. Someone started telling stories about drinking contests on various space stations. The humans were comparing notes on different homemade brews from across the galaxy, each sounding more lethal than the last. "Remember that stuff we had on Titan?" one of Jack's friends asked. "The one that made you speak backwards for a day?" "Or that drink from the asteroid miners?" another added. "The one they age in old reactor chambers?" The Blue Ones were frantically recording everything. Their most powerful toxins were being consumed like regular drinks, and the humans were reminiscing about even stronger substances they'd had before. The turning point came when old Joe, a retired terraforming engineer, pulled out a small flask from his pocket. "Speaking of strong drinks," he said with a mischievous grin, "I brought something special. My own recipe, been perfecting it for 20 years. The Blue One sensors nearly overloaded trying to analyze old Joe's concoction. Whatever was in that flask, it made their military-grade toxins look like water in comparison. First speaker Ray watched in horror as the humans passed around the flask, each taking a sip and commenting on its smooth finish and nice burn. Their monitoring equipment couldn't even identify half the compounds in the drink. "This is impossible," Ray muttered, his blue skin turning a pale shade of gray. Their bodies shouldn't be able to process these combinations of chemicals. As the night progressed, the Blue Ones were forced to accept that not only had their plan failed again, but they had accidentally helped create what the humans were calling the best bachelor party in station history. What truly terrified them, though, was the realization that humans had been making and drinking substances far more potent than anything the Blue Ones could create. And they did it for fun. Little did they know, their education about human drinking capabilities was about to reach its peak, as Old Joe had just offered to show them his secret brewing room deep in the station's maintenance level. The next day, despite their better judgment, First Speaker Ray and two Blue One scientists followed Old Joe down to the maintenance level of Space Station 7. Their mission had completely shifted from exposing human dangers to trying to understand how humans had mastered the art of brewing drinks that defied alien science. "Watch your step," Old Joe warned as he led them through a maze of pipes and machinery. "The station management doesn't officially know about this place." They arrived at what looked like an ordinary maintenance door. Old Joe pressed his hand against it, and it slid open to reveal something that made the Blue One's antennae stand straight up in shock. Inside was a sophisticated brewing operation that would have impressed even the most advanced alien chemical laboratories. Tubes of various sizes carried liquids between different containers. Strange fruits and grains from a dozen worlds were carefully organized on shelves. The air was thick with sweet and spicy smells that made the Blue One's sensor equipment crackle. "Welcome to my little workshop," Old Joe said proudly. "Been perfecting these recipes for 30 years across 3 solar systems." The Blue Ones scanned everything with their devices. The readings made no sense. According to their equipment, some of these mixtures should have been explosive, yet they watched as Old Joe casually sampled from different barrels. "This one here," he said, pointing to a barrel marked with 3 red X's, "is my special recipe. Ages it using radiation from the station's shield harmonics. Gives it a nice glow." First Speaker Ray's translator almost shorted out. "You intentionally expose the liquid to radiation?" "Sure do. The trick is getting the right frequency. Too much and it burns off the good stuff, too little and you don't get that tingling sensation when you drink it." The Blue Ones were frantically taking notes. They had spent weeks trying to poison humans with their most advanced toxins, while humans had been casually experimenting with radiation-aged alcohol for fun. Old Joe moved to another section where several bottles glowed with different colors. "These are my experimental batches. Been trying to recreate this amazing drink I had at a mining colony on Jupiter's moons. They fermented in old engine cores." The alien scientists exchanged worried looks. Their attempts to make dangerous drinks had been amateur hour compared to what humans were doing as a hobby. "The secret," Old Joe continued, completely unaware of the aliens' growing distress, "is understanding the interaction between different compounds. Like this batch here, combines traditional Earth whiskey with some crystals I found in an asteroid belt. Makes you able to taste colors for about an hour." First Speaker Ray's scientific curiosity finally overcame his caution. How do you test these drinks for safety?" Old Joe laughed. "Oh, we have a tasting club that meets every Thursday. Want to join us? Always good to have new opinions." The idea of a regular gathering where humans voluntarily tested experimental drinks that could alter perception and possibly reality itself was the final straw. The Blue One's entire understanding of what constituted a dangerous species needed serious revision. As they left Old Joe's secret brewery, First Speaker Ray realized their original mission had been doomed from the start. They had tried to prove humans were dangerous because they could drink toxins, while humans had turned drinking into an art form that went far beyond mere poison resistance. But the real revelation was yet to come. Because Old Joe had just invited them to something called Homebrewers Convention, where apparently hundreds of humans would gather to share their experimental drinks. The Blue Ones were about to learn that Old Joe's operation was considered small and conservative by human standards. The annual Space Station Homebrewers Convention was held in the station's largest cargo bay. The Blue Ones had brought every scanning device they owned, determined to understand how humans had developed such an advanced drinking culture. "Biggest turnout yet," Tom announced as he helped set up tables. "We've got brewers from Mars colonies, the mining stations, and even some deep space outposts this year." First Speaker Ray watched in amazement as humans began setting up their displays. Each booth featured drinks that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Some bottles contained liquids that changed color based on the drinker's mood. Others had drinks that floated upward instead of pouring down. "You've got to try this one," Bill said, pointing to a cloudy liquid that sparkled like a nebula. Made by the Europa ice miners. They age it in caves under the ice sheets. The pressure does something special to it. The Blue One scanning equipment was going haywire. The drinks on display contained combinations of elements that shouldn't have been stable, let alone drinkable. Yet humans were casually sampling them and discussing their qualities like food critics. "This is fascinating," a brewer from Mars explained to a curious crowd. "We used bacteria found in ancient Martian rocks to ferment this batch. Gives it a unique flavor you can't get anywhere else in the solar system." First speaker Ray's antennae were spinning in confusion. "You deliberately add alien bacteria to your drinks?" "Of course," the brewer replied cheerfully. "Some of the best drinks come from experimenting with new ingredients. Last year someone made a great batch using crystals from a comet's tail." The convention was full of similar surprises. There was a booth run by asteroid miners who aged their drinks in zero gravity. Another featured beverages that had been exposed to the light of different stars, each supposedly giving a unique taste. The turning point came when Old Joe unveiled his latest creation. "Been working on this one for years," he said proudly, revealing a bottle containing what looked like liquid starlight. "It's aged in a chamber that creates a small temporal distortion. Each sip tastes like it was made both yesterday and 100 years ago." The Blue One scientists were frantically recording everything. Their original mission to prove humans were dangerous because they could drink toxins now seemed laughably simple. Humans hadn't just adapted to drink poison, they had turned drinking into a science that surpassed alien understanding. "And here's the real specialty," announced a brewer from the outer colonies. "We found a way to ferment drinks using energy from a dying star. Makes you feel like you're floating through space when you drink it." First speaker Ray watched as humans eagerly lined up to try these impossible beverages. Their species hadn't just conquered alcohol, they had turned it into an art form that combined chemistry, physics, and possibly several laws of nature that alien science hadn't discovered yet. The convention reached its peak when the judging began. Drinks were evaluated not just on taste, but on properties like temporal stability, quantum resonance, and psychic aftertaste. The Blue Ones couldn't even understand half the criteria being discussed. As the day went on, first speaker Ray realized they needed to completely re-evaluate their understanding of human capabilities. But the biggest shock was yet to come, because someone had just mentioned something called a drinking game tournament, and the prizes included bottles of drinks that the Blue One sensors couldn't even detect. The aliens were about to learn that when it came to human drinking culture, what they'd seen so far was just the tip of a very large and scientifically impossible iceberg. As the homebrewers convention wound down, the humans decided to end the evening with their traditional drinking game tournament. The Blue Ones watched in fascination as complex rules were explained for games called Space Chess Shots, Asteroid Pong, and Zero-G Flip Cup. First speaker Ray and his team had given up on their original mission entirely. Their attempts to prove humans were dangerous because of their alcohol tolerance now seemed ridiculously naive. The reality was far more impressive, and terrifying. "Time for the grand finale," Tom announced, pulling out a special bottle. "This is a blend of drinks from every human colony in the galaxy. We call it Unity Brew." The Blue One sensors couldn't even begin to analyze the contents. The liquid inside the bottle seemed to shift between different states of matter, and the reading suggested it existed in several dimensions at once. "Would our blue friends like to join us for the final toast?" Bill asked, surprising the aliens. "After all, you've been studying our drinks for weeks now. Maybe it's time you tried some yourself?" First speaker Ray's antennae went rigid with shock. "You knew about our attempts to spike your drinks?" Tom laughed. "Of course we did. Your toxins actually improved the flavor. We figured you'd tell us when you were ready to talk about it. The revelation that humans had known all along about their secret mission was humbling. Even more surprising was that instead of being angry, the humans found it amusing and were now offering to share their drinks with them. But, won't it poison us? Ray asked nervously. Old Joe stepped forward with a special container. Already thought of that. Been working on a modified version that's safe for your biology. Used some of that interesting chemical structure from your toxins to make it compatible. The blue ones were speechless. While they had been trying to prove humans were dangerous, the humans had been figuring out how to safely share their drinking culture with alien species. First speaker Ray looked at the modified drink, then at his fellow aliens. After a moment of hesitation, he made a decision that would change interspecies relations forever. We accept your offer, he said. The bar erupted in cheers. Humans and blue ones gathered around as special glasses were poured. The modified drink glowed with a gentle blue light that matched the alien skin. To new friends, Tom proclaimed, raising his glass. To new friends, Ray agreed, and took his first sip of human alcohol. The sensation was unlike anything the blue ones had ever experienced. The drink seemed to dance on their tongues, creating flavors they didn't have words for in any language. Now they finally understood why humans had spent thousands of years perfecting these beverages. In the following weeks, the blue ones submitted a very different report to their homeworld than they had originally planned. Instead of warning about human dangers, they wrote about human ingenuity, creativity, and most importantly, their willingness to share their knowledge with other species. Soon, Space Station 7 became famous across the galaxy as the place where different species could gather to safely experience human drinking culture. Tom's bar was expanded to include special sections for various alien biologies, each with their own modified versions of human drinks. And every year at the Homebrewers Convention, the blue ones would present their own creations, having learned the art of brewing from their human friends. Their specialty became a drink that actually turned the drinker's skin blue for a few hours, completely safe, of course. As for first speaker Ray, he became known as the first alien to truly appreciate human alcohol culture. He even started his own brewery, specializing in cross-species compatible drinks. His most popular creation was called First Contact, a drink that tasted different to every species that tried it. The humans had not only survived the blue one's attempt to poison them, they had turned it into the foundation of a lasting friendship. After all, as humans had known for thousands of years, some of the best relationships start with sharing a drink.